I don't know about you, but I've always loved Sean Dyche, and there's no record of me saying the opposite. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Sean Dyche, managerial genius. I've always said it. Love his style of football. Love the approach. I think, do I think he deserves a huge club? I think he does. And I think, if I'm Sean Dyche, first of all, I would be thrilled because I'd be a lovely man with wonderful footballing principles. If I want a big club job, what I do is I go out and I beat Manchester City and show that I earn it. And I think that's what's going to happen. Poor Pep Guardiola in the press, moaning, complaining. We've got to play too close to our Real Madrid game. Boo-hoo. I only have to use the other 11 players acquired for £200 million or whatever the hell it is. You know what, Pep? Shut up. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear it. What we want to see is you make 11 changes and lose 5-0. That's all we want to see. We don't want to hear your nonsense, your guff. You can beat Real Madrid in midweek. We're all fine with that. All you have to do is lose to Everton, lose to Brighton, lose to Brentford, lose to Chelsea. If you do that, Pep, you are a legend among Arsenal fans. An absolute legend. So, see what you can do. Work it out. Hey, over on the Patreon side of things, Clive and I did power rankings. And it was so much fun because the other teams all stink and are having terrible seasons. So I think you'll enjoy it. There's a lot of really deep analysis on what happens next for Spurs and Chelsea and Liverpool and United and City and Brighton and Villa and stuff like that. But there's also a lot of laughing at them because they all stink. City aside, unfortunately. But yeah, so I think you'll enjoy that. There's a new SCAC up. If you don't know what SCAC is, congratulations. It's a life well lived, but it's up and it's available for you. And there's a new women's pod coming with Clive and Tim. So lots of stuff over there. We'd love to have you there, but we're thrilled to have you here. Just anywhere. We are thrilled to have you anywhere. Okay? Read that as you may. Here with me now is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at PosMyPants.
Woohoo!
And Clive, you can find him on Twitter at ClivePSC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Hello, indeed. Indeed. Nailed it. Okay. Clive, Mikel Arteta has been talking, and he has slightly diverged from the Ornicle, from Ornstein's Ornbaum. But the bomb essentially was that Zinchenko was done for the season. Now, the season is 3 games. So like any injury, and you could just be done for the season. It's a calf injury. There's a couple of interesting layers to this because one, we could talk about how we'll miss Zinchenko and how we'll replace him. The other is we could talk about all the praise we gave Mikel for recognizing to make the early swap to take out Zinchenko and put in Tierney at Newcastle. Well, actually, maybe he just had no choice. But that's fine. Doing the right thing for whatever reason is still the right thing. Clive, how concerned are you about Zinchenko's absence, and how would you sort it for Brighton's visit to the Emirates on Sunday?
Oh, nice little free swim there, Elliot. So basically, yeah, with Zinchenko, I think, got his name wrong. With Zinchenko, I think, he's had a little bit of strange form, shall we say, of late. And sometimes I think as fans, we don't recognise when people are on the verge of an injury, carrying something for a few games. And the injury tends to show itself later in games because sometimes when you're carrying an injury, you don't train with the same level of intensity, so you fall away concentration-wise, fitness-wise towards the end of games. And we've seen some issues. Go back to the West Ham game. If you're wondering how important Zinchenko is to us, I thought he was missed significantly in that West Ham game, particularly when Holding was playing. We lost a lot of build-up, and we've done that pod, Elliot. So I have a few thoughts on this, mate. I've been dog walking. I've been thinking. And I think we have a battle I have a battle in my head around playing a more traditional game when we have traditional players on the pitch, like Kieran Tierney, who want to play in straight lines, versus the inversion, Man City, Brighton type controlling central zones, having people very comfortable in those areas. I think, this game really screams to me for a more traditional system to control what Brighton like to do, which is play out through central areas, bring people on. There's a great TIFO video out there showing all of this months ago. Bait people on, centre-backs look after the ball, bring people in, play through central areas. I think this is a day for a traditional system with a fullback wants to push up down the left-hand side, potentially play Trossard in this game, tucking inside, potentially play Xhaka where he played last week against Newcastle, a little bit more behind the ball, and feed that left-hand side like we used to do. But make sure we can control that central area, because I think being competitive there against Brighton is really important. So I would definitely go that way, and I would go that way for this period of the season anyway, to make sure that we're stable in that middle. I sort of missed the podcast with you guys around Newcastle, and I don't know how much you embellished on it, but the combination of Xhaka and Jorginho for me was significant in that victory. You know, I watched the game back and I thought how they played together was superb. But giving them someone to hit on the outside, I think is very important, and how we stretch the pitch, because Brighton will not get out to the outside areas as quickly as we can get the ball there. I think it's really important. So that's how I would go for it, Elliot. I would traditional 4-2-3-1 with a couple of boxes down the middle with 2 10s in Odegaard and Trossard tucked inside. I would go that way for this game, with Saka playing high on the right rather than waiting to Newcastle and Martinelli on the left. I'd have Saka high on the right because their left back is decent running downhill. So I would have him pinned back by having Saka playing high. That's how I'd approach it, mate.
This is going to be a really, really tough game. I think Brighton are very, very good. And I think we're going to be challenged. You know, Kiwior has looked excellent in 2 games now. This might be his sternest test. I mean, Newcastle away is a pretty tough test, but this might be as tough or tougher. And doing it without Zinchenko, you know, Brighton wants to keep the ball. Maybe this is a game where you let them have a little more of the ball. Because without Zinchenko, I think our ability to control might be less, but maybe with Tierney, we can counter better. I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe he uses Tierney, and instead of playing Martinelli, he plays Trossard, right? Trossard wants to play a little more in the half space. Maybe can come into midfield a little bit more. Tierney wants to overlap and play out wide. So instead of having Martinelli in the 5th lane and Zinchenko tucked in, maybe you have Trossard a little closer to Xhaka and Party, and Tierney out on the touchline. All options, all approaches you could take. But Paul, I am seeing, and look, you have to be very careful about how much airtime you give to opinions that you see floating around the internet. But like, we're all one big happy family of Arsenal fans, and everybody has different opinions, and some of them I think catch my eye and lead me to get into conversations that I find to be interesting, and I'm going to bring this one into the pod. There are people that I think are expressing that Zinchenko is a liability, or Zinchenko has not been as great as I've felt he's been. I think he's an absolutely transformative part of our team and a reason why we've had the season we've had. But there are people that are more frustrated by his defensive liability, or what they perceive to be his defensive liability, and see him as having been a big figure in some of the recent drop points. I cannot connect to that view, and I'll maybe give my explanation in a moment as to why I don't. Where are you on Zinchenko as the right fit for the left back and the way he plays the position and the trade-off we have there in terms of defensive solidity versus attacking authority and intent?
Well, so I think there's 2 parts to that. How do we feel? How does Arteta feel? I think it's pretty clear Arteta sees Zinchenko as a key pillar of how he plays Arteta ball. It brings it up another level. And I think I talked on the last pod we did that we might be quite happy with a performance from an individual player and the result and how a game turned out. And Arteta may walk away from a game saying, we did not play that game the way I need to play it going forward. It's kind of a toothpaste progression of our level of football. So he's just going to want a guy who can la pausa the ball, put his foot on the ball in the middle of the park, do different things, change the pace, has gears, move up, move down, move it around, read what's ahead of him. We might like a flying, attacking fullback flying up that wing, putting in cutbacks and having a good game. It might not be what Arteta thinks is the best game, the best football that takes us to where we need to go. And my eyes adjusting to that. Until we're able to control games at different speeds, etc., I don't think this team is playing on the trajectory we're looking to play. So I love Zinchenko. He's, as Clive has said, he's taught me a lot about football. I knew what he'd do for us. I just didn't know what that would really look like and feel like within our team. And it's just expands your mind of what football can be. The stats show over the games he's been missing that we reviewed this on the stats guy in the Civilian yesterday, that we're about the same with him without Zinchenko.
I think that's really noisy. I'd like to pick at that at the moment.
Yeah. But as we discussed, kind of small sample size issues there in terms of the games he hasn't been available for. They're against tough teams. So there's the City games, etc. In the run in, one or two very tough games there. So I'm not sure that's what they really show. And more data will show more. Just when you watch the team, it's got so many more ways to play against the opposition. And yes, we're more vulnerable defensively, but the idea would be, that's how Pep has made his living, being a bit more vulnerable defensively, but you defend by control, possession, not being so direct, being able to knock the ball around and move it into the positions you want it to be in, so that if you spill it there, you can counter, you can counter press, get the ball back, get it in dangerous positions, and we're evolving. So my eye has adjusted to that, and I feel the loss without Zinchenko, but we need to be able to play without any specific player. I do think it's interesting we have a player that I think we all know could step into midfield and do a Zinchenko-like job from the other side, which is Ben White. And I think we all know that's not an option we'll see this week against Brighton. But there are possibilities for other players to step in there, and for us to play in a different way. The way Clive described how we might adjust with Zinchenko, Trossard, Tierney on that side makes perfect sense. And I think footballing is correct. But I still have that feeling that Martinelli starts, and I think a lot of people feel that's probably or at least a better than 50-50 chance of Martinelli starting, because he's been so good, so effective, up high and left. But in terms of a coherent way of playing, what Clive described makes the most sense. So I think Tierney will be asked to do his best Zinchenko impersonation, and we'll set up in our conventional format, and that's how we play it.
Yeah. I mean, Mikel has shown that his first choice is to just play the next man up and not shift things around. A few things on Zinchenko. So first of all, Arsenal have 79 goals. Non-penalty goals, we are one expected goal behind City for top in the league.
Amazing.
Non-penalty expected goals. City have, by the way, 10 penalties. 10. It's just, you cheat enough already, for God's sakes. Do you need 10 penalties too? But we have essentially the best non-cheater attack in the league.
That's 131 charges now against City when we add yours, Elliot,
for those penalties. And that has been a transformative thing, not just for the points we have. Watching this team score these 79 goals has been an absolute joy. And Zinchenko's addition has absolutely transformed that. This is an astonishing stat, I think, from Scott. Alexander Zinchenko has played a part in nearly 40% of the expected goals that Arsenal have created while he's on the pitch, in terms of being involved in a move. So nearly 40% of the expected goals we create, nearly 40% of the shots we take, basically, flow through Zinchenko at some point during the move. He is tied in terms of the most passes per game with Saliba, which, by the way, tells you we're missing about 120 passes a game right now with Zinchenko and Saliba out. Those are passes that have to go through less technical, less effective players. Okay? He is top in terms of progressive passes per 90. Top by a lot. Next is Odegaard, quite a bit behind. He is top for final third entries in our team. Okay? He is top for XG buildup in our team. So tied for top for passing, top for progressive passes, top for final third entries, and top for XG buildup. Playing a hybrid left back role where Mikel says to him, please go everywhere on the pitch and always be 3 yards from the ball and always provide comfort and options for your teammates wherever they may be. Go stand in the center circle when we're building play from the back. And oh, by the way, find a way to protect the left back space when you can. He's in the 95th percentile for aerial duels. 95th percentile. I think he leads the team in aerial duel wins, or is right thereabouts. He is not the best one-on-one defender, and he has made a couple of errors recently. But people act like other people haven't as well. I mean, Thomas Partey has the flick against West Ham that cost us that game ultimately. Bukayo Saka missed a penalty. Aaron Ramsdale threw the ball to Southampton. But everybody wants to talk about Zinchenko getting nutmegged at Anfield. Did anybody notice when Tierney came on at Anfield, by the way? Clive and I rewatched the second half of that game. Kieran Tierney made 2 crucial errors, neither of which was punished. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get unlucky. I'm not saying Zinchenko's a great defender. And in fact, if you watch the scouting video we did on Patreon, one of the things that we very clearly flagged is his defending could be an issue. But when you look at how we play and who we play through, he is the hub of what we do. And he's asked to go into very tricky places and still find a way to come back and be part of the defense. So I'm not exonerating him. Like, for example, the goal we conceded against Chelsea, that's laziness. That's lack of concentration. That's not okay. But I do think, Clive, that he has been an extraordinary contributor to this team. And I think there are very short memories. Since Saliba's gone out, he's looked more exposed. You know who else has looked exposed? Everybody. So I just think we should be very, very appreciative of what we get from this player. Oh, by the way, Manchester City, when they lost their left back, when Cancelo went and they weren't sure who they were going to use, they used Bernardo Silva at left back for us. This system requires a technical player at left back. It's not your grandfather's touchline fullback running up and down. So I don't know, Clive. I hate to proselytize, and I'm sure everybody listening, admires Zinchenko, but maybe I admire him too much. I think I doth protest too much. I adore this player. I think he is just a beautiful player to watch on the pitch.
I can see the lawyer side coming out in you, feeling you have to defend him vigorously. I'm thinking, well, I don't think you have to be that vigorous. Just think back to the West Ham game when we lost control of that game and we missed him massively, and let's be honest, right? A lot of our analysis that you see online, Elliot, and I keep telling you, stay away from it, is outcome based. And if there's a bad outcome from an action, it sticks in our mind. And this is a theory I have, right? I'm gonna run this theory past you guys, and it's something I think Arsenal need to be better at, right? So, and I think we will be next year, because as we played this year, we played the season. Every game mattered, every training session mattered. We didn't worry too much about rotation. We got better and better and better, and we started to believe. We rebuilt a little bit in January to sort of empower and elongate the league challenge. And we sort of dropped away. But we dropped away last April. And something I've been thinking about is how things matter in the month of April and May. And it's almost like the NBA season. There's the regular season and there's the playoffs. And I think we have to start looking at April and May like the playoffs, where every single detail matters. Every selection, every pass, every dispossession, it matters. And I feel the team level of pragmatism and certainty and saving the players' engines to make sure it really matters in the winning months. And the winning months are April and May. And we have stretched our team out till April and May and see what comes out at the back end of it. We've done it for 2 seasons now, and potentially it's not going to go away on both occasions. However, I can caveat that by saying we haven't got the squad depth. Last year we had the Zach Swanson effect. This year we've lost a key centre-back. Anna had a World Cup that's affected our centre mid. Our adjustments around that have taken a little bit too long, and we dropped some silly points with some silly mistakes. I can deal with it. I can live with it. But next year, we know how to win. There isn't a single ground apart from maybe some of the Northwest that scare us. We know how to win. We're going to win. We need to win games more efficiently, quicker, and also make sure we save people's legs. And that's what the summer's going to be about. Because we're losing Zinchenko, we've looked like a fatigue injury. And so maybe you think to yourself, maybe we can get away with that. I'm not worried about it. I'm really not worried about it. What I am worried about is how people perceive things in these key times. So we have to almost proactively manage that. Every single event, every mistake, we won't forget. We don't remember the mistakes in October. We don't care. We've got time to recover, but we do remember about April. And I think we've got to really focus on that and maybe look at our analysis on that basis. And when it comes to our team selections and the rhythm of our teams and the pragmatism of our teams and what we do at certain phases of game states in April, in the playoffs, needs a review, in my opinion.
Yeah, people don't necessarily always look at the causal chain that leads to an outcome. They look at the outcome and they look at the last thing that happened before the outcome. But the causal chain may be long and it may stretch back a long way. it could be an
starts far from the beach.
That's the expression I'm looking for. The wave starts far from the beach, and the wave may start in the Europa League group stage. The wave may start. I remember Arsene Wenger. It used to drive me nuts. Post World Cups, I mean, he would bring some of our most important players back so late, and I think, we've thrown away some early points. But he knew, I can't win the league or compete for top 4 in August. I have to be competing for it in April and May. You cannot win the league in August. Now, you can lose the league in August, to be fair, but you cannot win it in August. And if you do things in August and September that leave you short in April and May, people may not remember that August and September happened. Well, they remember they happened. They may not remember what happened. They're just going to look at the outcome. But again, the wave started far from the shore. And so we do have to strengthen the squad. We know that. But I think we will have a very, very interesting look at how Mikel Arteta plans to make us a two-front team. Because whatever you think of the FA Cup, whatever you think of the League Cup, Champions League is not or even the Europa League. Champions League is not a thing you can just shrug your shoulders. And I'm looking at some of the pots. We could be in a group with Bayern and Real Madrid. It's not even a joke. It's ridiculous. Real Madrid, as it stands right now, are going into pot 2, unless they win the Champions League. They're going into pot 2. We're in pot 3 as it stands right now. Now we could get into pot 2. Madrid could wind up in pot 1. All things can change, but this is not going to be the groups you remember where it's like Arsenal, Sevilla, and 2 teams you never heard of. It's going to be legit. And it's going to take a lot of focus and a lot of energy, and we're going to have to figure out how to fight on 2 fronts. And that's going to be an interesting thing, Paul. It is 2 seasons now where we find ourselves limping to the finish line with some sort of patchwork teams in some respect. Do you think that the next evolution here, the next thing that we're going to have to figure out, especially with Champions League coming back for the first time, is it 6 seasons or 7 seasons? Was it 6 seasons out?
Yeah.
Yes.
6 seasons out. So our first time in 7 seasons, basically. Is the next evolution for Mikel to really not just strengthen enough to be able to do this, but to trust more players and not have, as Tim points out, and I think Tim really pointed this out really well, it opened my eyes a bit, not have a Champions League squad and a Premier League squad, but a group of 18 players he trusts and uses interchangeably across the 2 competitions.
Absolutely. And has more players he can trust and trusts more players.
By the way, the vigorous head shake from Clive means we're coming back to him on this point, just as a heads up.
Okay. Incoming.
It's called a teaser.
Guys and gals listening out there, keep listening to me. I'll talk for a bit, and then Clive will be in there.
It's a teaser. So keep listening.
I'm filling in. I'm tap dancing. Look, Pep plays 4 competitions strongly because that's what you need to do to keep a squad the size of 18 outfield players you trust engaged, so that you will see pairings that tend to show up a little bit more in the Premier League versus the Champions League. And yet those are competitions that you could say for most of the season, Pep treats them pretty equally. Obviously, when he gets the quarters, semis, and final rounds for Champions League, that takes priority for him. But like everything up to that point, everything through till, you might say, through April, the players can see that if they're starting in the European competition, it's as highly valued as the Premier League. And that allows you to scale to 18 trusted players. And, when we've had a conversation around how many players does Arteta trust today in the Arsenal squad, it's probably 12 or 13 players, between players that can play football at the level and can fit in to the overall scenario, players who can be consistently fit enough to be a part and a factor. And it tells you he needs another 4 or 5 players that, when Zinchenko needs to rest because he's got a calf strain, the answer is pretty obvious for him and for us. It's when Saliba's out, the answer's obvious. When White is out, the answer's obvious. And we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely the next stage of, and what this summer will be all about. I do think there's a psychological component. I'll give you the short version of my tennis analogy I've used a couple of times, which is you could be talented enough, but when you get to your first major Grand Slam semi-final or final, and you're up against Djokovic or Federer or Nadal, as they were once very early in their career, the second time you get into that position, you get tight, and you don't have the looseness you need at the key juncture in the third, the fourth set, where you could kill it, where you're ahead. And that to me is this season for Arsenal. So we're learning how to stay loose, as well as the other sporting analogy is in Tour de France, you get a jump and you're way out in front for whatever reasons. And like, you just go for it. You don't go back to the pack and say, I'm going to save myself till late in this particular day to see if I can come from the pack and win it. If you got the jump, you go for it. And we got the jump this year. Everything lined up. We started fast. We couldn't pace ourselves. It would have made no sense to try and pace yourself for March, April, May. We were ahead. You go for it. We might actually win it if things aligned for us. It turns out we kind of got a little tight, but what we did in the end was what we had to do this time around. Next season, Clive's framed it perfectly. In our own mind, and you see it with City, they have invented the playoffs for how this season ends up. Liverpool, if they were good enough this season, will be in the playoffs for this season, and they know the final quarter of the season is the playoffs. And I think, well done, Clive. You've framed it perfectly.
Well, look at that. Little hat tip to Clive just to make sure he goes easy on us for getting it wrong leading into him. All right, Clive, what's your perspective on basically anything, really? What's your perspective on anything?
No, I just think the two squad thing, I don't quite agree with. I agree. If you look at the Europa League the year before when we were doing it, there was literally a different 11. I think that's reduced to 6 and 7. And then what you'll find is that towards the end of the game, some of your first choice will have 25 minutes. Then everyone has a day off. Do you see what I mean? And so no one has to then train the next day. So I think I see that slightly. I see that matured from the previous season when it was a distinct 11. We had young players to play, which we sold a couple, etc. I think it's more of the group. And for us now, it's to improve the quality of that group, so that we can, when we make those 4 or 5 changes, maybe for Champions, maybe 3 or 4 changes for Champions League game, but then you end the game with a different player, or you might take off Odegaard after an hour because you've got a big league game on the Saturday. But Fabio Vieira needs to be really good to do that, to then have the good half-hour impact, and they share the game on the Saturday. That's what we need to get to. I think it's almost like you're splitting positions rather than splitting teams. And I can say that now because we got 5 subs in the league, where we didn't have 2 years ago in the Europa League, so we had a distinct squad. So we had 5 subs in the league, and we got 5 subs in Europe. So it's available for you. What did Pep do in the last game in the semi-final against Madrid? Played 11 players. You can already pick the team for the second leg, can't you? It's going to be the same team, right? He played them for 90. Let's see how many of them start against Everton, which he didn't want to play. He wanted to have a complete almost chuck that game, but we won at Newcastle, so Everton's relevant. So rotation, how it's done, is maturing all the time due to the rule changes. That's the truth of it. The rule changes, starting and ending games. That's what we've got to be looking for now. So we are totally comfortable when Big Gabby's playing. We can say, you know what, mate, we got big game at the weekend. After an hour, you're off. Kivior's coming on in the Champions League. Why not? And that's what we've got to get to. We've got to be comfortable with that. And I think that's where I think we're heading there fast, Elliot. I really do. Really fast.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. I think, well, since you brought it up, let's just touch on the Champions League for a second. Clive, it was a really, really high-level game that was played between Madrid and City, if we're being honest. Early on, it looked like City might have the chance to blow the doors off Madrid, but they stayed compact. They used their quality to get a goal from nothing, really, and then City looked rocked for a bit, and they went back and forth. I have to admit, I was really surprised Pep didn't make any substitutions, because by the end, some of them looked out on their feet. Bernardo Silva was begging to be subbed off. He wanted to come off so bad. So I'm curious why he made the decision. I guess to just keep wrapped in cotton wool the team he's going to put out against Everton, so that he can run out this 11 again next week. But when you look at
control.
Yeah.
Like, he just has players that say control to him, like Zinchenko would say control to us. And, he doesn't go for the faster, more direct players.
Well, but I mean, like in the 80th minute, when you got guys like Bernardo and De Bruyne who looked like they were going to fall over dead.
They're fine.
Yeah, they're fine. They got legs in them. But he did get through it. It was a high level game. You know what it reminded me of watching it a bit with us having Champions League next season? It reminded me of the way we watched the Liverpool and City games in the league and said, that's the level we have to get to. Watching this tells you the level we're going to need to get to if we want to go win the big ears, the cup with the big ears. And so it's another step up to go. What did you think of that matchup and the level that those two teams sort of showed us to strive for?
Yeah, I mean, talk about everything matters. Camavinga, absolutely fantastic player. Oh my goodness, what a player he is. He's 20 years of age, runs down the hill, inside and outside, plays left back, plays number 6, can play left 8. And he's already said, I don't want to ever leave this club. Well, mate, you're not going to ever have to leave this club.
Yeah.
you're absolutely fine. But he played one bad pass in the interior and bang, 2 seconds later, Kevin De Bruyne smashed it in the bottom of your net. We're all sitting on set, he's going, oh my goodness. That's the level. One bad pass. Good job, Camavinga. Your name's not Thomas Partey, otherwise you're getting loads of stick, right? Just one bad pass.
Yeah.
That's all it is, right? And that's the level that we're dealing with. And I think it's made me think about the evolution of Arsenal and the evolution of football. And Paul touched on it there. Pep is the ultimate control freak. I loved Sane and Sterling City. But what he has now in Grealish and Bernardo, who don't lose the ball when they come off the sides, they just keep it. And they want to control it. And we've seen this, haven't we? We were waiting for a mistake against them in the away game. There was just none off the sides, was there? Just none. Every time it came off the sides, they kept it. And it made us feel uneasy. When they get it into the monsters in the interior, in Haaland and De Bruyne, we were petrified, weren't we? We were petrified. So we feel the control level. And I do think if you're a coach now, and every coach wants to control the game in their own certain way, the players that are gold are the players that can break up control. High interceptors, high tacklers, transitioners, create your own accelerations within the team. Those are the gold players, and also players who can stop transitions, stop momentums against you, and create your own momentums. Because that's the uncoachable bit. That's the bit you can't control. If you can have people who can control what you can't control, oh my goodness, that's what you want, isn't it? You can sleep. You can sleep. And I think you can see what Pep's trying to do. And by looking at him, which I do a lot, you can see the future of the game on the future of how you need to beat them. And players that we're linked with, I'll tell you now, I can see the sense behind them massively. And I know we're all football fans and we focus on the ball, but I think maybe 90% of the time when you're a football player on the pitch, you are not on the ball. You are off the ball. And that is the gold in football. That is the gold that we sometimes find hard to see and read. But those players who can see that off the ball, see the patterns, see what they're trying to do, see what they're trying to run, and steal it, are the ones we need to get in our team for the next level. And that makes us way more efficient on goal scoring, transitions, easy goals, without having to have super coach goals end to end from the goalkeeper's rollout, which we were doing a couple of years ago. We can create our own goals and mini transitions. And I think that's the future, mate, to beat these control freaks.
Yeah. And then you need that player or those two players that if they're on their game, it doesn't matter what the opposition does, they're going to beat you. And, Paul, it is at some level still a game about talent. Like, are Real Madrid as good as Manchester City? They're not. I don't think they're even close to as good as Manchester City. But they have some individual talent that can win them games, and it does not matter. When you have Vinny and Benzema, like, Vinicius scores a goal from nothing at a point in the game where they're being dominated. And what can you do with individual quality like that? And I think as much as Erling Haaland is a force of nature, I still think Kevin De Bruyne is the guy that you can't live with him if he's on his game. He's going to do something to beat you. And maybe I have scars because he was so good against us in both games this season. The way he played when we went to the Etihad was just otherworldly. And I know you can be like, oh, it was just so simple. He found a place behind Thomas Partey and explain. No. The way he found the space and what he did when he got in the space was just otherworldly. And 2 goals and an assist later, or a goal and 2 assists, whatever the hell it was, he killed us. And I just wonder if that's the level Martin Odegaard can get to and become that player that in European spotlight in a semifinal Champions League can be the one that's running the show and scoring the important goal. And Mikel was talking about Odegaard today in his pre-match press conference, talking about on his progress as a goal scorer. It's great. Those are the demands that he puts on himself. Those are the areas that he had huge margins to improve, and he's making huge steps in the right direction to become a game winner, which is with the profile and role that he has in the team to do that. Then you need really good teammates around you, which he has, and that helps as well. On his character, he has the character that everybody respects, everybody admires, and everybody follows. He does it in his own way. There are many ways of leading a team, and he is a unique one because it's his own, and we don't want to take anything away from that. He continues. We're really happy that he represents the club in the way that he does, and the team and every individual. He needs to continue to develop those skills in the best way because the demands will keep increasing, and his role will hopefully as well. All the talk about Saka being our best player, when Martinelli's on for him the way he plays, or the impact Jesus made when he came in the team, Saliba is the best center back in the league, or Zinchenko's teaching us about football. There's Martin Odegaard with his 22 goal involvements, scoring winners, providing the assist to win games. And I just watched Kevin De Bruyne winning Champions League semifinal games and destroying us. And I think we have that player coming, and he's coming into his prime. Is Odegaard kind of sneaky, the guy that needs to become our game winner, as Mikel says, to be the one that can, in the highest level of competition, win us the big games?
That's a great question. I kind of see his curve being maybe a little less dramatic in terms of his impact in games. Obviously, his individual contributions have been very significant recently. His performance against Newcastle just stands out, and there's been the critique of him that he's not a big game player. Well, that was a huge game, and he was basically man of the match, depending on how you want to look at that particular game, that performance. But I do think he's in that Ozil position to some degree, that if the team isn't functioning, you can't really ask Martin Odegaard to have a great game in big games. The team has to be having a good game in big games for a Martin Odegaard, for the 10, for the more creative person. I know they are different profiles, and you can see why Ozil would be even quieter in games than an Odegaard might be if it's a tough game where we're not seeing much of the ball because of his off-ball work, his pressing, his counter-pressing, the fact that he may force a turnover and make something really happen there. But basically, he's our most creative player up the pitch that things would go through if we had the ball. And it's a really tough criticism to say, oh, he doesn't show up in big games. Is that the symptom, or is that the disease? And for me, it's very much a symptom of the fact. Let's go to the Real Madrid City conversation, take the other side of it. Real Madrid are the most fascinating team on the planet. I don't understand them. And we talked about individual brilliance. And as Clive is hinting in the messaging, Vinicius Jr. being maybe the best player on the planet at the moment. But the thing is, it isn't just him. Real Madrid have a unique capability for themselves that they play in moments. So they were getting battered by City, and yet within that you could go back and look at moments, not just an individual player, but 3 or 4 or 5 of them get together and it's like go time, and they just move it through City and they attack. Now City are still dominant, still structured, still playing, but Madrid are telling themselves all the time, okay, we're still feeling it, we're waiting for our moments. It's almost like they're winking at each other. A couple of passes between Camavinga and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we're there, we're waiting for the moment. And then bang, they get you. The weird thing in this game was the De Bruyne goals seemed to puncture that balloon in a way I haven't seen previously in those City ties. I mean, they looked like a normal team this not no longer this well, basically the sum of their parts, and the parts weren't getting much of the ball, and
Yeah.
City had them under control as they did earlier on, but they were more than the sum of the parts. They would make these combos, and like the air was out of that balloon. So it'd be really interesting to see that second leg. So I think you see one's a very systems approach, and one's a very, every time it's almost like a band that gets together and jam. You get 3 or 4 or 5 guys in the room, and Lennon starts doing a riff, and McCartney joins in, and the drums come in a little bit, and then a little bit, and like they always feel each other, almost like a jazz or a rock band that really feels each other.
Versus Ancelotti summed up, right? Ancelotti's sort of the nurture talent and let them put them in positions to thrive, and Pep is the micromanager and moves them around like pieces on a chessboard.
Yeah, and they're just the Real guys, they're just feeling it, they're kind of getting the jam going, and then bang, they go for it. And like they lost that towards the end of this game. So I think each one of these players has their own kind of profile. I think Odegaard is a really busy player and can stay in games. He's not quite a Kevin De Bruyne, and he's much more part of the how we play. Kevin De Bruyne's issue with Pep sometimes is he's too direct, he's too individual in a sense, and that's why you'll often see him getting pulled off in a game or not played in a particular game where you're like, how is De Bruyne not playing here? So interesting ways of being brilliant.
Yeah, different ways to be brilliant for sure. And if you don't believe momentum is real in sports, because I know there to some extent, I think momentum is used all the time. It's like they scored a goal, now they have the momentum. They conceded, now they don't have the momentum. But like this was a momentum game, right? Because City had it all early on. Vinny scores one out of nowhere, and City were rocked. And then De Bruyne scores one out of nowhere, and Madrid were rocked. And it was very interesting how that shifted who controlled the game. I want to do this. I want to take a quick break to tell you about the most important things we talk about on this podcast, which obviously is sponsors. And then I do want to preview the Brighton game. I do want to cover the rumor mill a bit. A couple Xhaka rumors out there, maybe a Saka rumor, maybe a Declan Rice rumor. So let's firstly tell you that this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is therapy. Okay, therapy is health. It is taking care of yourself. I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, oh, when I talk to my therapist, and they just threw it in the conversation when I talked to my therapist. There was no stigma. There was no embarrassment. It's a thing that person does. And that's how we should think about it. The therapy is a thing you do to be healthy. No one would be uncomfortable saying I went to the gym or I went to the doctor or I used the Lawnmower 4.0 to shave my privates. And you shouldn't be embarrassed to say you see a therapist because it is part of health. So what BetterHelp does is it makes it accessible, right? You can get to know yourself over a lifelong process with a therapist that is designed to be a specialist in the areas you need. You can find the right therapist. It's flexible. You don't have to get in the car and drive to an office and find the time to do that. Camera on, camera off, your choice. And it may be a more affordable way to have access to therapy. So discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/vision today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. Okay, do that. And then take care of your body. And the way you take care of your body is with Athletic Greens. AG1 is 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, adaptogens, probiotics. It's keto-friendly, vegan-friendly, dairy-free, low sugar. I had gummy vitamins. I took them forever. I looked on the back. The first 7 ingredients are all some form of sugar. How the heck is that doing me any good? I had a friend, he's a doctor, he was taking AG1. I started taking AG1. Now you start to talk to everybody. Everybody swears by it. You know why? Because it's great for gut health, for sleep, for recovery, for energy. And it gives you all those key daily nutrients that you need without a bunch of sugar that you don't need. It's affordable. When you say, is it affordable? Well, here's how I say it's affordable. I threw out all those gummy vitamins, and I'm getting better health through AG1 and through BetterHelp. Anyway, you get the idea. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/vision. That's athleticgreens.com/vision. Check it out. Finally, went to Mexico for a friend's celebration and got in the pool. And the first thing I noticed, he was wearing Shady Rays. Starting to see them all over the place. Great sunglasses, polarized lenses in all different styles. This is super easy. By the way, they also have customizable snow goggles. If you want to get sunglasses from a company that offers a world-class product, just as good as any expensive pair you bought, with durable frames and extremely clear optics for outdoor adventures, then you need Shady Rays. And it's backed by the best thing I've ever seen for sunglasses, a lost and broken replacement guarantee. Look, the reason I buy sunglasses, I've lost them or I broke them. That's it. It's the only reason. If I have sunglasses and I like my sunglasses, why would I replace my sunglasses if they're lost or broken? Obviously. What if you got to wear sunglasses? What are you going to do? You're going to buy new sunglasses? You're not going to buy new sunglasses unless they're lost and broken. So get the ones with a lost and broken guarantee, for goodness sake. Plus, they donated over 20 million meals to fight hunger. And you get 30-day risk-free trial. You get 30 days. You put them on. You don't like them. The 30 days, send them back. You get the idea. Anyway, exclusively for you, Shady Rays is giving out the best deal of the year. Go to ShadyRays.com and use code ArsenalVision for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. ShadyRays.com, use code ArsenalVision, 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the Shady Rays 5-star. Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Get it?
What must that be like at 1.5, 1.75, or 2.0 speed?
I don't know, but I think it attracts whales. If you play that on 2x speed in the ocean through a huge speaker with a big bass rumble, it'll attract whales. Clive, Granit Xhaka leaving this summer, 10 million to Bayern Leverkusen. That's the rumor. It's a rumor. It doesn't sound real to me. But what would you say if I told you that we're finally retiring Granit Xhaka from the midfield?
Although I've been trying to retire him for at least 3 years and feel that the next phase of Arsenal is in his position, I don't want to retire him. I think he just needs to be played, maybe not every 3 days, just maybe. I mean, did you see the difference in his power in the Newcastle game versus the sick Granit Xhaka that made the manager pick him at City? The difference is significant. We can have that more often if we have better players to rotate him with. So I think, given the fact he's been in the club 6-7 years, wherever it is, and we've finally got back to the Champions League, I'd love to see him get a chance to play in the Champions League for Arsenal. However, there are rumours that his wife wants to go back to Germany. This could have been something that's been agreed a couple of years ago. And she wants to go back to that region, and that club is sitting there, and they have a couple of players that Arsenal are interested in, actually. And you can easily make up the sums and make them add up, right? So I'm not going to go down that path. I would like to see him stay, but I'd also like to see the players that we all want to arrive and get to a position where gains can be shared with that level of quality player in our squad. And if he has to leave on a free transfer next year, there are certain players in our club that deserve one, right? So I wouldn't be against that, but I wouldn't mind him seeing play in Champions League. But if Arsenal would take 10 mil and go again and go big, I'll be behind that too, right? So I'm quite comfortable whichever way it goes.
Yeah, I look at it this way. I think it makes all the sense in the world to keep Granit Xhaka for all the things he brings to this club. And there was a time past me from 2 seasons ago would reach through the microphone and slap current me for saying that, right? So I find myself in the surprising position of having come to recognize the importance of Granit Xhaka, not just to what we do on the pitch, but to the group, but also to what we do on the pitch. And part of that is that Mikel Arteta has found a role that absolutely does suit him beautifully, that I think emphasizes some of his strengths and minimizes some of his flaws, his weaknesses. Having said that, I think an important next evolution for us is having a player in that role who has a little bit of those quicker feet and a little bit of that better instinct around the box to add even more threat to what we do and can do it all there. That's easier said than done. You have to find that player, obviously. I think Xhaka's staying, but not being the guy who starts every big game, not being the guy who plays every critical game, sounds like a great solution. Oh, he'll be our James Milner. The problem is Granit Xhaka's not that guy. Granit Xhaka is not a guy who's going to go quietly into that good night. He's not going to go out with a bang, with a whimper. He's going to go out with a bang. And I think the only way Granit Xhaka is a value to your club, this is just a guess, I could be wrong, is if he's starting every game for your club. And this is the problem with Granit Xhaka. He's available every game. He's never injured. He's a huge leader. He's a really important contributor. He's done wonderfully on the pitch. If you want to upgrade him, but keep him so you can have all the cultural benefits of him being around and all the other benefits, the problem is you may run into the issue of him being unhappy. Because he just may not be suited for psychologically being anything other than the guy who starts every game. So I don't know, Paul. I think I think if you're keeping Granit Xhaka, you're playing Granit Xhaka is my feeling. And by the way, that is based on nothing. It's a guess, but that's how I think he probably sees himself. I certainly don't think he looks like a guy who sees himself as ready to drift into rotational option mode. What about you?
I think we underestimate him to a degree psychologically. We've said in the past that he wouldn't like this player coming in and getting that spot, have that player come in and take that spot on the pitch. He's been asked to do, if you like, a third job at this stage, and he embraced it, and it was said very forcefully, in the kind of way that a certain player could take it the wrong way and take the hump. He was basically told, you need to do this job up the pitch, and if you can't do it, I'll get somebody else to do it. And he utterly embraced it. The idea that his family need to go back to Germany this year rather than next year, despite the fact that Granit Xhaka has finally got into the Champions League with one of the best football teams in the world, but they can't wait one more year to go back, or 2 more years, seems like they're going to have long lives post-football, post-Arsenal, post next season. I don't, that's so, like, this is the story that writes itself every summer. XYZ club in Germany wants Granit Xhaka. They'll pay us 25 million. They're already, it was 20 million, then it was down to 15. You're telling me it's 10. It'll be 5 million, and we hadn't realized his wages were so high and we can't afford those. Actually, it needs to be free. It's like, it's just,
it'll be free a year from now.
Yeah. This will be the third season in a row where the rumor mill kicks off. And I think there was much more validity to it in other years. You're right that he won't want to be sitting on the bench all season, nor should he. On the other hand, why are we assuming this is the best version of Granit Xhaka at this position? I was mocked, Elliot, possibly by you, at the start of the season.
Hopefully.
When we were asked for our breakout player of the season, generally a younger player or somebody that really, and I picked Granit Xhaka because, like, he hadn't done this before. We'd just seen hints of it last season. I'm like that would be surprising, and I absolutely won't put it past him that he kicks on and does a real job here, and somehow he's managed to do a version of that position that largely plays to his strengths. He's going to have the preseason to retool, to kind of rework it. He can get better next year, unbelievably. He can make better runs, find better understanding with players, work on his shooting, work on his moments around the box. We bring in somebody else, but like the players we're talking about bringing in, Rice, maybe Caicedo, they haven't played this position either. So he's got at least another season where he could be a serious factor in that position, rotating with other players, 52 games in different competitions. He's not going to want to sit on the bench for sure, if for no other reason than he's going to have a European Cup and a World Cup that he wants to get to with Switzerland. And he has no interest in being late career James Milner. He might quite happily be something like the James Milner that just originally joined Liverpool and played loads of games in different positions and shows his flexibility and adaptability and was a big factor in their dressing room. Slightly different version of that. So my bet is he sticks around. He's got at least another season. He enjoys that which the team brought in, and he brought in, getting us. People said he wasn't good enough to be in a Champions League level team, a top 4 team. And not only was he good enough, he's a big piece of the reason we got there. I can't imagine he's going to walk away from that.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. I mean, he's certainly done enough. He's rehabilitated his reputation to the extent it needed to be in a massive way this season. If he does go, he'll go with everybody's appreciation, which is not something you would have expected. And if he stays, I think for the first time in a long time, nobody's going to be complaining about it. The only thing I will say is that, like, don't make me do it. Don't make me say the words age curve. All right, fine. I said the words age curve.
Well, I was going to say,
turns 31 in September. No one does it forever. You know,
we used to always move people at just the right time.
Arsene Wenger famously, right, at 30 you get 1-year contracts. That's it.
Yeah,
that was a long time ago. Look at Gundogan.
And the game has changed. The game has changed, and so sports science has changed, and the ability to change people within game has changed. So, but yeah, we must remind ourselves.
He hasn't built his game either, Clive, on his burst of speed, right? He's built his game around. Who was it who ran the length of the pitch to
endurance? His engine.
He's an engine. He's an engine, and but Paul wants us. The game is about accelerations now. Right, your ability to accelerate,
especially around the box. Yeah.
It's not your speed per se, your top end speed. It's around accelerations. Can you create accelerations? Can you create transitions? And it's just the next phase. It's not like he can't play. I mean, I really enjoyed performance at Newcastle. He was my man of match basically at Newcastle. Right, so so he can play. Obviously, he can play. I'm not worried. It'll work out. Well, I'm really comfortable with it, which tells you how far he's come, because we spent a lot of time talking about him, and I think he's come a long way. And if we're
looking for 18 trusted outfield players, you don't get there by adding one and subtracting one.
Yeah, this is my battle, Paul. Yeah, sorry, mate. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that's where, look, only Mikel and Xhaka can settle this. But if Mikel says, I've got an eye on someone who I think can play your position, and I want you to know going into next season, you'll be competing for that position, or maybe likely not the first choice. If Granit says to Mikel, honestly, Mikel, I'd like to go back to Germany. That's not, mate, I don't want to fight for my place.
This conversation would have happened 2 years ago when he signed the contract. Yeah. When he extended. This is not, you don't make these sort of life moves without advance notice.
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe there is something in the plan. We'll see. Look, we'll see. Yeah. I want to get your take on Rice real quick, because the problem with Declan Rice is he went and did the dumbest thing imaginable. I mean, it's so stupid. And like, if you want your dream move to Arsenal, mate, like he should have known better. And frankly, it makes me think less of the player. He went out and he played unbelievably great football for the last 6 weeks. And he's completely skyrocketed his value now. I mean, what are you doing, mate? Just play middling football, jog around a bit. Let us get you for 80 million, 75 million. Now the price is going up. Now the clubs that are involved are the names are getting scarier. I have always thought that if Rice is who we want, Rice is who we're going to get. I haven't even been totally convinced it's who we should get. But now it looks like this is going to be a really hot transfer story. So what do you think, Clive? Has Rice been too good? Is his mistake being too good? Should he have rethought that?
Yeah, I've done many a podcast with you, sir. And there's one podcast which I thought, you know what, I best stay quiet, which was a scouting podcast we did on Rice.
Yes.
I thought we misread him. And and I thought, again, going back to what a player can be, where he's in his development, how he's been coached, what he's been asked to do, how he's looking at our shirt. I thought he's got some potential. And by the way, you can find tweets of mine, I guarantee you, in the past watching England games where I've not been having him at all. But he has changed my opinion. It probably changed when I saw him live about 2 years ago. And I couldn't believe it. I literally was watching his player run across the pitch amongst other athletes, just completely get into everything first. And we won the game. It was all a good day, but that stuck in my mind, and it started to change my perception of him. And in a team where he has got little help, and I thought, imagine in our team, imagine us reducing the space he can work in. Imagine us giving him 1.5 jobs to do, and that's still less than the 3 jobs he has to do for West Ham. Imagine him coming off the right-hand side and left-hand side, banging shots on inverted style on his right foot. He can score, he can defend, he can intercept, he can tackle. And he brings a lot of himself. And we're going through an amazing period in our history regarding the players that we all like. When we've been doing this podcast now for how many years? 5 years? Well, we haven't done the podcast 7. While we've been outside of the
inside the Champions League.
Champions League. The amount of discussions we've had about our players, half of them we didn't like. Well, we don't have the discussions anymore. We like these, and he's another guy that brings a lot of himself to the group. And I think that's very important to have the right type of characters in the squad. You know, when they're not the right characters, you can see it doesn't work, and we can spot it. I'm a huge fan of him Huge fan of what he can be. I don't think he's even scratched the surface yet. I generally don't think he's scratched the surface. I think we've got to, if we do get him, he's the next England captain for me. And I think it's required. But if we don't get him, by the way, Elliot, we've been here with Mudryk, haven't we? We convinced ourselves we were getting him. The price skyrocketed. We didn't get him. And I've got to learn that lesson. Don't start putting him in your team, in your own mind, until they turn up, because it could easily change. And the kid we're playing against the weekend has got amazing talent as well in Caicedo, and the club will make the right decision. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because Caicedo is in more that early project period of his career, right? He's 21. Declan Rice turned 24 in January. I mean, you'd have him for his age 25, 26, 27 seasons, right? And if he stayed beyond that, like, you really could have him for the full of his prime. And this club is ready to explode right now, and you want players going right into their prime. It's not a project anymore. One thing that I do think is worth looking at, these players that break in early sometimes fade early as well. They just start to look older earlier. Cesc Fabregas is a great example. He's probably at his best in his early 20s. Declan Rice has played 17,000 Premier League minutes. In his last 5 seasons, including this one, he's been 3,000, 3,400, 2,900, 3,200, and he will be over 3,200 again this season in terms of minutes just in the Premier League. It's a lot of football in those legs already. So that's just one thing that, I'd look at, because sometimes these players that storm onto the scene at 18 or even 16, like Cesc did, and play a ton of minutes and dominate, by the time they're 27, 28, they're already looking old. Now, look, just to be clear, I'm not saying don't buy him because of that. I'm just saying it's a thought in my head. It's just something I thought about. And I share the things that are in my head with you because that's the relationship we have. So,
yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
I think it's a good point, Elliot. And he plays all the England games as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So it is a good point. Players like him, we take for granted. They're going to turn up and play all of the time and just never miss a minute. I'm not sure he's missed a single minute of the West Ham season so far this year. He plays all the European games as well. And he doesn't seem to be flagging until they do start to flag. We were saying the same thing about Bukayo Saka, weren't we, mate, the other day? Yeah. And he showed a little bit of signs of flagging. He's not playing bad.
I mean, look, if he comes to Arsenal, he doesn't need to play potentially 3,400 minutes a season. Maybe he plays 2,800. You can manage him more because it's a bigger squad. Paul, forget price for a minute, because can we pay 50 million for Rice? Yes. Can we pay 120 million for Rice? Yes. Can we pay 400 million for Rice? Yes. We can literally pay any price if we are committed to paying it, and Stan Kroenke says yes to it. So we have no idea what the price is. Forget that. Do the clubs that are involved in it and the prices that are being quoted with it give you pause now to think that we might wind up shifting to another option? How committed are you to Rice as the true north, the North Star of our summer, and the one that we're going to go all in to get?
I'm quite committed to Rice. I think for footballing, for capabilities, for psychological reasons, he's a perfect piece. Maybe in a way that Caicedo isn't yet. Seems a little flighty, that Caicedo guy. He's young, right? He's looking for his big move. I don't think Caicedo cares where the big move is that much. I think Rice has a career plan, and that's what I'm hopeful about. I mean, there seems to be such a good vibe around the club about him that they must have heard enough coming back the other way. I'm not saying it's done and it's a done deal and we're safe. I'm just saying it's a much more mature, considered approach from both sides that makes me think there's plenty of mileage in it, and it won't be totally about highest bidder and all that kind of thing. Not that it won't be about the money, it'll be about the money. But he'll have his... And to be fair to the Mudryk saga, like, he nearly got here. He did everything he could to get here. He just had agents, clubs, money on all sides working against him. But it was a thing. He did everything he as an individual could up to a point, but he was determined to get his move that window, and he got his move. I think the mistake Rice has made is that Rice has been on the boil recently, when in fact he's supposed to be simmering with the lid on.
Clive?
No, I just heard Paul talking about Caicedo. I wonder if Caicedo's move, there's some whispers about he signed that extension with a view to give him a pay rise because he's literally on about
Sure.
200 quid a week. and so he signed he's got an extension to a healthy wage, which basically means if you keep quiet, son, turn up for training, we'll give you a pay rise. And we'll sign his contract and we'll let you go for X number if a Champions League team comes in for you. And I think that's the sort of deals that are done in football. So maybe
that's what I thought would have happened back in January before anything happened. I'm like, nah, the simplest solution here is Brighton say, here's a whopping big pay rise. And in the summer, you'll get your move and we'll get paid and you'll get paid.
Yeah. And Brighton, I mean, while we've been on this podcast, they've just agreed a deal for Mahmoud Dahoud, who plays for Dortmund, who's a centre mid. I'm not saying it's the same type of centre mid. They've already got James Milner. They've already got João Pedro, who comes from Watford. They're not sitting here waiting. They're doing these deals. A couple of frees in there. You know, they're such a clever club. So they are already preparing for the days when people like us come along and flex our muscles and take their talents. They get paid. They go again. Right. So I'd love to have them both, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you like them both?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think both is the let's go win everything move, but we'll have to see what happens.
The thing to your point, Elliot, like the Cronkies do go big. And this is the kind of player that I think the Cronkies would say, shit, we'd planned 70, 80 million.
You know what's weird?
The real number is 110. Let's do that. I mean, they did 72. I've forgotten 72? Now. 72 million.
72 million pound Pepe. That's his name.
For
How can you forget his name?
Pepe.
He's still our player.
Yeah, look at that.
Well, you know what's interesting? We've seen the Cronkies go big, but you know what's interesting, guys? We've literally never seen the Cronkies be asked to go big by a manager who they trusted in a team that was good. I mean, they give that charlatan Raul and Unai Emery 72 million pounds to buy Nicola Pepe. They gave those charlatans money to spend. Now you've got Mikel freaking Arteta leading us within a couple points of a title. And if he's going to go ask you for money, you have a lot more credibility to where the project is going. Now, the Cronkies are also famously on record as saying you don't buy a sports team to win titles. So
what he didn't say was you don't buy a sports team and try not to win titles also.
That's true. Okay, well, look, let's finish up with a quick Brighton preview. Clive, Brighton are a good team. They got absolutely dismantled by Everton, but they got dismantled playing on the counter, basically. I mean, it was one of those typical Brighton games. They had all the ball, all the territory, all the shots, and Everton had 5 shots and 5 goals. But they did look good on the counter. I mean, is there an argument that with no Saliba and no Zinchenko, that maybe a little bit more counterattacking style? I mean, we're not going to sit back at the Emirates against Brighton, but I kind of wonder if they showed where their vulnerability is, and maybe we can take a leaf out of Pep's book and just say, you know what, we're not scared to play a different way. We're just going to go direct right through you, counterattack you to death.
Yeah, I think we'll try to control the game like we do. All I would probably see is a slight shift in Xhaka position, and that's all I'd see really. I'm hoping I see that, but we may not. We may see Kieran Tierney standing on the centre spot. Let's see, right? So, but I will say Brighton have got a lot of games coming up and have had a lot of games. They're starting to creak a little bit. They've got injury to Solly March, who plays on the right wing, inverted. Good player, him. Normally plays in midfield, but he's a good player as a winger. Injury to Adam Webster, centre-back I really like. Veltman is on the edge of an injury and not sure he's going to play. They played Caicedo at right back the other day because they're struggling in the full-back spaces. They could be struggling at centre-back spaces. So they love playing at Arsenal. They seem to enjoy messing up our dreams, right? So I don't want to count my chickens, but for once we could be playing them at the right time with more to gain than they have. And I think that will take us there. The confidence building from Chelsea and Newcastle, I know we've lost players, but that Newcastle game was special, mate. You know, it really was. And it's one of those reference points game we're going to refer back to. People like to refer back to us about Brentford, Palace, Newcastle, Spurs. But we've got our reference points games now. Spurs away, Newcastle away, Chelsea away. You know, we've got these games. United at home, Liverpool at home. We're building up our own reference points now, and a couple more to do. But I do fancy us this time, but I don't think it's going to be easy, Elliot. I worry about this team. More the club. I worry about the club. They like our ground. They like playing there. It worries me.
It's been an interesting couple of matchups. They knocked us out of the League Cup, but we beat them away. The thing about the away game is, God, we were good, weren't we? We were so good. It was such an impressive performance. And then we started to shit ourselves a little bit. And if they don't get I believe Matoma goal called back by VAR for one of the dodgiest offside calls you've seen in a long time, that could have gone very, very differently at the end there. So an interesting couple of games we've had against them. Paul, it's not that they scare me. It's that there really aren't a lot of teams that are going to come play us and try to have the ball. And they're one of them. And it just sets up such an interesting matchup because we have the ball. That's what we do. And they have the ball. That's what they do. And I never know whether what you want to do is just continue to try to play to your strengths and make them try to outstrength you, or go with a little of the, what did we decide it was? Jiu-jitsu or Akita, Tai Chi, the one where you use their energies against.
It's basically all martial arts.
All right, it's
actually
all
has
well, the point
use
is,
their force.
Use their force against them. What do you think? Should we do the Tai Chi, Jiu-Jitsu, Akita, or just do what
Tai Chi? You really shouldn't be hitting other people in that. I made the mistake once.
Okay.
You know that Bruce Lee movie where he's in his kung fu school and they raid another kung fu school to settle a debt. That happened to me when I was in San Francisco. I thought I spotted this other kung fu school I was a rival with. They were practicing out in the middle of a park. It turned out I beat the shit out of 70-year-old fucking Tai Chi guys in a case of mistaken identity. So
you thought they were doing kung fu, but they were doing.
I thought they were warming up. That was actually their thing, and it wasn't the kung fu school. I thought I was doing really well. I got 3-4 of them down.
This is bothering me because this is just furthering Andrew and James's conviction that you're the one that they would want with you in a zombie apocalypse.
I'm ruthless.
But only if the zombies, I guess, are 75 years old.
I attacked a Tai Chi school in San Francisco. What was the question?
Well, I don't know, but now you're going to jail for confessing to assault and battery, so it doesn't really matter.
How scared should we be of Brighton, and how much possession?
Should we play our game or their game? What do you think?
Yeah, we'd like to play our game. We may not have the players that make us quite as dominant as we'd like to be to play our game. It might be fairly even from a possession point of view. Doesn't necessarily hurt us in a one game. Across the season, there's a way you like to play. In this game, you just got to be able to adapt to a little bit different player profile. I think we should be fine, as Clive outlined, and I felt even more so by the end of it. Like, it isn't their perfect moment. We have enough. We have enough psychologically. The Newcastle, look at the Newcastle game. They had possession, especially in the early stages, and we found our ways to play through it and use that for us to make them a little more vulnerable. I think we got plenty and enough where we can play in bursts and moments. We'll have enough possession for us. We'll have as long as we don't make dumb mistakes early on. Which we did recently and can happen in any game. But psychologically, Newcastle did a lot of repair for us. I think we'll be in a pretty decent state. The stakes are high, but it's not like, oh my God, the title's ours and we can lose it. So I think we can stay just loose enough that we can play really good football and we're going to be fine.
I hope so, because that would be nice.
I think I was going to say, right, on Sunday we have the Everton City game just before, because their game was moved for the Eurovision Song Contest. Would you believe it? So it's been moved to a Sunday.
Yes, Pep's been whining about it nonstop.
Yeah, so that's going to be a problem for them. But just imagine if they drop points. Could you imagine the atmosphere in the ground? Oh my goodness, for the Brighton game. It will be going off, mate. It's going to be nice sunny weather on Sunday. I'll tell you, it could be the one. That could be the one. And if we that changes all game plans. We're going to come out there like mad dogs, right?
Like the clappers.
Them apart. Yeah. So Sunday could be a really good day. Either way, we need to win any game. We got to make the last few games matter, for City. But we're all hoping that Sean Dyche does his thing, right? That's where you started the podcast, isn't it, Elliot? So.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's That's what it all boils down to. But let's at least do our thing as well as we can do our thing and worry about the rest some other time. So I think we'll leave it there. We'll have an instant reaction after the Brighton game, obviously, and then more stuff. There'll just be more stuff. Just come find the stuff, and if you want the stuff is there. You can have the stuff. It's really that simple. And then just if you're in San Francisco and you see Paul, just stay out of the park. That's what I would say. Paul's on Twitter. Pause my fans. Thanks, Paul.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter. Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
We're a weird group. My name is Elliot Smith. You can follow me on Twitter. Yankee Gunner. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10. Brighton. No.